There is something nobody really prepares people for when it comes to relationships. Sometimes the biggest problem is not that you chose the wrong person. Sometimes the problem is that you enter the relationship without truly knowing yourself first. And that's why so many people lose themselves in love, even without realizing that is happening. They start changing slowly, compromising silently, ignoring their needs, abandoning standards, over adapting, over giving, over performing, until one day the relationship ends. They're asking themselves a very terrifying question: who was I before this relationship? Because somewhere between trying to be loved and trying to make things work, they disconnected from themselves completely. And honestly, I think this is one of the biggest reasons many relationships become emotionally unhealthy. The problem is this: people are trying to build a we before they've fully developed a solid sense of me. Did you hear that? Let me come again. The problem here is that people are always trying to build a we before they fully developed a sense of me. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, this is the space where we talk about identity, self-worth, relationships, healing, emotional intelligence, and becoming the kind of person who no longer abandons themselves just to be loved. So, if that sounds like your kind of conversation, then please subscribe, get comfortable, and let's talk about something that affects almost everybody at some point in life: the me before the we. Because self-discovery is not selfish, it's necessary. Now let's start here. A lot of people enter into relationships looking for completion instead of connection. And that alone changes everything. You can always tell when someone is dating from a place of emotional wholeness versus emotional emptiness. One person is saying, I want to share my life with somebody. The other person is saying, I need someone to make me feel valuable. Those are two different things completely. Do you know that? They are two different energies. And the scary part is that many people don't even realize that they are using relationships to escape from themselves. They don't know who they are alone. They don't know how to validate themselves. They don't know how to enjoy their own company. They don't even know what truly makes them happy outside the attention and emotional attachment. So they rush into relationships, hoping love will give them an identity. And for a while, it feels so amazing, of course, because relationships can temporarily distract you from unresolved issues within yourself and feel wanted, seen, chosen, important. But eventually, reality catches up because no relationship can permanently carry the weight of an identity crisis. And this is why some people become emotionally dependent without even realizing it. Their self-worth becomes attached to the relationship. If the relationship feels stable, they feel okay. If the relationship becomes distant, their entire emotional world collapses. And this is not healthy love. Trust me, it is not. That is emotional dependency disguised as romance. And honestly, a lot of people normalize this because they think intense attachment equals deep love. But deep love should not require you disappear inside of yourself. One of the most dangerous things that can happen in a relationship is losing your individuality without noticing. It starts subtly. You stop doing things that you used to enjoy because your life starts revolving around the relationship. You stop expressing certain opinions because you don't want conflict. You become more focused on being accepted than being authentic. You begin shrinking parts of yourselves just to maintain emotional security. And slowly, the relationship becomes your identity. Now, hear me clearly. Love should add to your life and not erase you from your life. Did you hear that? Love is supposed to add to your life and not erase you from your life. And this is why self discovery matters before relationships. Because when you know yourself, you move differently in relationships. You communicate differently. You choose differently. You tolerate less confusion. You stop normalizing unhealthy behavior. You stop begging for bare minimum efforts. You stop over compromising just to avoid abandonment. Why? Because people who know themselves usually have stronger emotional boundaries. And boundaries are deeply connected to identity. If you don't know yourself, you won't know what aligns with you. You won't know what genuinely makes you happy. You won't know what kind of love is healthy for you. You will just keep adapting to whoever is in front of you. And that's exactly why many people stay in relationships that are slowly destroying their confidence. Because they never built a strong internal foundation before entering love. You know something that I've noticed over the years? A lot of people are physically present in relationships but emotionally disconnected from themselves. They know their partner's favorite food, favorite color, favorite artist, but they don't even know themselves deeply. They don't know their emotional triggers, their attachment style, their fears, their needs, their patterns, their boundaries, their unresolved wounds. And then they just wonder why relationship becomes chaotic. Self-awareness changes relationships completely. Because when you understand yourself, you stop expecting your partner to magically heal things that you haven't faced within yourself. Mhm. You stop projecting unresolved pains onto people. Stop turning relationships into emotional rescue missions. And honestly, one of the most attractive things about emotionally mature people is that they know who they are outside of relationships. Their identity is not built entirely around being chosen. They can love deeply without abandoning themselves. That is emotional stability. And let's talk about something many people struggle with: loneliness. Because some people don't enter relationships because they are genuinely ready for partnership. They enter relationships because they are uncomfortable being alone. And there is a difference. Being alone forces self confrontation. It forces you to meet yourself without distractions. Your insecurities, your habits, your fears, your thought patterns, your emotional wounds. And so many people avoid that by constantly seeking emotional companionship. But here's the truth: if you cannot enjoy your own company, you would eventually place unhealthy pressure on relationships to fill emotional gaps that only self work can address. Your partner cannot become your therapist, your identity, your confidence, your purpose, and your emotional regulator all at once. No, that pressure eventually creates emotional exhaustion in relationships. And this is where many people start saying things like, I lost myself in the relationship. But if we are to be very honest here, most people lose themselves because they never truly found themselves before entering the relationship. Now, does that mean you must be perfectly healed before dating? Oh no, you don't have to be. Of course, nobody is perfectly healed. Nobody has life fully figured out. But there is a difference between growing with somebody and depending on someone to emotionally define you. There's a difference. Self discovery means understanding your values. What truly matters to you? What kind of life aligns with you? What kind of communication works for you? And what kind of love feels healthy to you? What kind of behavior will you no longer tolerate? Without that awareness, you will just keep choosing relationships based on chemistry instead of compatibility. And chemistry alone is not enough to sustain healthy love. Of course, chemistry can make people overlook red flags. Chemistry can make emotional inconsistency feels exciting. Chemistry can even make toxic attachment feel so passionate. But compatibility requires self-awareness. And self-awareness requires self-discovery. That is why some people repeat same relationship patterns, just with different faces, different names, different location, same emotional chaos. Because the external person changes, but the internal person remains unaddressed. And honestly, one of the hardest but most important questions people need to ask themselves is this: who am I outside of relationships? Not as somebody's partner, not as somebody's emotional support system, not as somebody's validation source, just you. What do you enjoy? What gives your life meaning? What values define you? What standards matter to you? What dreams belong to you? Because when you know yourself first, you stop accepting relationships that require self abandonment to survive. You stop confusing emotional instability with love. You stop fighting to keep connections that continuously damage your peace. And one thing I really want people to understand is this: self discovery is not just about journaling and self help quotes. No. Sometimes self discovery is painful because it requires honesty. It requires admitting that you've tolerated things you shouldn't have tolerated. You've ignored red flags out of fear of loneliness. You've accepted less because you didn't fully believe you deserved more. You've shaped yourself around people instead of standing firmly in your identity. That level of honesty can be uncomfortable, but it's necessary for emotional growth. And honestly, the strongest relationships are built between two people who have a sense of self outside of each other. People who can love themselves without controlling, without over depending, without emotional disappearing into the relationship. That's healthy love. Healthy love allows individuality, it allows honesty, growth, boundaries, freedom, self expression. It doesn't require constant self sacrifice to survive. No. And it's so unfortunate that some people are busy chasing relationships when what they actually need is self reconnection. Not another talking stage, not another situationship, not even another emotional distraction. They need time to understand themselves again, to rebuild confidence, to connect with their identity, to understand their patterns, to heal their self worth again. Because, listen, relationship amplify who you already are internally. So, if you lack boundaries before love, that problem usually becomes louder inside relationships. So, if you struggle with self worth before love, that insecurity often follows you into that relationship too. And that's why the me before the we matters so much, because the quality of your relationship with yourself affects every relationship you build with other people. And honestly, I think one of the biggest signs of emotional maturity is no longer seeing relationships as a proof of worthiness. And this is what I usually tell people. A relationship should complement your life, not become your entire identity. You should still feel connected to yourself while loving somebody else. Yes. And if loving somebody requires you to constantly betray yourself, shrink yourself, silence yourself, or abandon your emotional needs, that relationship may not actually be healthy for you. One thing I wish more people understand is this: being deeply loved means very little if you're deeply disconnected from yourself. Because eventually, no amount of attention can compensate for self abandonment. And honestly, a lot of people don't need another relationship right now. They need clarity. Clarity about themselves, about standards, about emotional patterns, about values, about fears, about their identity. Because when you know yourself, you stop entering relationships blindly. You move with intention instead of desperation. And that changes everything. So, if you're watching me right now and you feel you've lost yourself in relationships before, I need you to understand something. Your ability to love others should never, ever come at the cost of losing yourself completely. Did you hear me? I said, in case you're watching me right now and you feel like you've lost yourself in relationships before, this is what I need you to understand right now. Your ability to love others should never, ever, ever come at the cost of losing yourself completely. You deserve relationships where you can be fully loved without abandoning who you truly are. But that starts with building a relationship with yourself first. The me before the we. Because self discovery is not selfish, it is the foundation of a healthy connection. If this conversation resonated with you, please do well to subscribe to this channel and let me know in the comment section, do you think most people truly know themselves before entering relationships? Or do you think most people discover themselves through heartbreaks? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comment section. Alright? And I'll see you in my next video. It's not a goodbye, but it's a bye for now.